Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw, and that would be the WWE Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And this guest we have been waiting for and excited for. Talk about a diverse career, from the blood and guts of the sheep herders to the entertainment and the baby faces with the Bushwackers. He's a WWE Hall of Famer, one of the greatest names in professional wrestling history. He is Bushwacker Luke. How you doing, Bushwacker Luke?
Oh, good day, mateys. How are you doing there today? And all my fans out there, it's good to be on this podcast with my two favorites, Gerald Brisco and the clothesline from hell, JBL.
Hey, Luke, it's great to have you on here. I run into you every once in a while. We were just discussing beforehand about some projects you have coming back, the books, and maybe a Freebird. Wow. Bushwacker reunion down the line here. But man, it's a pleasure to have you on. And you know, you're one of my favorite Kiwis. You and that damn Tony Garea. He got a rank up there too. But I read a little banner that you and JBL was having before we got on, back and forth trying to set this thing up, about rugby. I mean, Tony Garea swears that he was the greatest rugby player that New Zealand ever produced. Is he lying or what?
No, he was a rugby league player. Butch and me a rugby union. Rugby league is JBL will tell you, it's a different kettle of fish. There's no scrums in rugby league. They just one man goes down and kicks the ball back. You know about that, JBL?
Yes, sir. That is exactly right. Rugby union is what's played mainly in, especially the Northern Hemisphere. You know, that's what.
That's what. Hey, Gerald. That's rugby union. So the Steelers play rugby league.
So Tony was basically a minor league rugby player, and he claims to be this big star.
Yeah,
but he's not here to defend himself. But anyway, man, it's great to have you on. And you know, our careers were intertwined so much. You know, here in Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, and most of all, we used to have a lot of really fun matches, but they were kind of brutal matches in Puerto Rico.
I can tell you one that I remember.
Which one's that?
On an anniversary show, and it was the sheep herders lost by stories against the Briscoes. So we hit the ring, and then they came out to the ring, and then we started the match, and the ring started getting loaded with all the garbage you could think, cans, whatever could come. Gerald and Jack said, "We're going home." We hadn't even got started, and they said, "We're going home."
That was brutal down there. I mean, you guys had so much heat when we didn't realize how much heat you guys actually had, because we'd just come in from Florida for that big anniversary show that they have every year down there. And what was it, 15, 16,000 people in there, and the heat you guys had. And you guys went to the ring first, and then so we didn't see you guys' battle going to the ring. But when we got out there, you know, all of a sudden the match goes to ding, ding, ding. And man, that ring started filling up with garbage. Man, Jack looked around, and here comes all the Puerto Rican fans right up against the ringside. You guys have been used to it, but we've been working here in Florida with the security. And man, Jack said, "Let's go home, Luke." And we started doing some spots, man. It turned out great, but man, you guys really carried some heat down there.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time down there. I think that was in the late 70s or 80s. But I came back and booked for Carlos from 83 to 85, middle of 83. Tom Ernesto was there, and I come and took over his spot. And that's when we did the big show when Abdullah joined Carlos against Hanson and Brody, and we did 40,000 people.
Wow.
That was great in those in the early 80s to do that much in a small promotion. That was a great.
On a small island, basically, too. Yeah, but that's got to be fantastic. Had a fantastic feeling to you. But you're a guy that grew up in New Zealand, And I had the great fortune of going to New Zealand in 1971 and working for Steve down there. And it was a strange setup. You guys had one of the most unique styles. Was television popular when you guys first started in, and was there local television? How did you first see that squared circle and say, I want to go in that squared circle?
Well, my next door neighbor was a bodybuilder, and he came second in Mr. New Zealand, and the promoter and the judge for Mr. New Zealand was a former Mr. New Zealand, and he was the New Zealand wrestling promoter. This was 1961. So he started, the promoter, the guy said to him, former New Zealand said to him, why don't you make some money with that body? And he said, how? He says, come to Coolman's gym. Coolman's gym was like a gym in the first Rocky movie. The old steam pipes would be rattling. There were kettlebells laying around the floor. There was one bench press and one squat rack. Now there was 2 rings, boxing rings, 20 by 20, a foot off the floor. And, the floor was as hard as the floor you're standing on now. And there was 4 ropes. New Zealand, there was 4 ropes. And after he was going in for about 4 or 5 months, he says to me, come to the gym with me. So I started going.
How old were you? How old are you, Luke?
I was 15 and a half, 16 maybe, yeah. This is my 7th decade in the ring at the moment.
Wow.
And I was in there in the ring in this last weekend anyhow. So I started going to this bloody gym, and this gym, it was Coolman's gym in Wellington, the capital city, and it was known for Commonwealth boxing champions and amateur wrestling champions.
Wellington or Christchurch is it? Wellington.
That's where Steve Rickard's home was, Wellington.
Yeah.
The capital. Yeah. And there's an old gym there, and it was notorious for Commonwealth boxing champions and wrestling champions. So I started there in 62, and we never had television till 67, 1967. So I started going there with him, and then my second time ever to see a wrestling match, one of the guys didn't arrive. The next minute I got a pair of boots thrown at me and a tank top. I kept my jeans on. They gave me a tank top. I was 175 wet.
Is that when you became gorgeous, Luke?
Gorgeous Teddy Williams.
All right.
and that was
what a rib that was.
Gorgeous Teddy Williams, and that in 1962. And then I realized I saw Murphy the Surfy, who from Australia, and he was from England. He was with Jonathan Boyd as the Royal Kangaroos.
I worked with both of those guys down in Australia.
Yeah, anyhow, I saw how he moves and did all that stuff, so I started copying that stuff. And then I had a female valet. And then I first went to work for Jimsy, WCW in Australia. Jim came down, I'm talking about Jim Barnett, came down to Australia in 65, bought the roller derby out, and he had the business for about two months. I brought Killer Kowalski in. And there was only 2 talk shows, or 1 talk show in Australia. There's 4 TV channels. And he did the 1 talk show, Killer Kowalski put the claw on the guy's stomach. It was, and he sold it like hell. He was taken out in an ambulance, and that place, Australia, popped wide open. Jimsy was there from 65 to 72. And when I went to Australia the first time, Jim changed my name to Sweet William.
Sweet William.
So I dropped Gorgeous Teddy, and I was Sweet William, and hence then Butch started in 66.
And then Butch started in New Zealand or in Australia?
In New Zealand.
In New Zealand. Tell us a little bit about the venues down there and the style of work. You guys worked, when I went down there, you guys were still into the round system, and we had to go long rounds because they had to go so much time, had to put so much time.
Get into that now. So it was The was the commission. The commission was the police. The promoter had to send all the names of 6 weeks beforehand into the town who was running police and that, and they would check to see that no one had a criminal record. no one be in the States that only end up with 2 guys on the card.
That's right. We couldn't have done that in Texas or Florida.
No. The police would come to the arena 2 hours before the arena and measure the ropes to make sure they're 20 feet apart. 20 feet apart. If they were 19.5 feet, they hadn't put the shackles tight enough, they wouldn't let you go on. It had to be 20 feet apart, and you couldn't punch or kick. You had to do uppercuts, and you had to drop legs or drop a knee. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was all completely different, and it was rounds. The main event was 8 8-minute rounds. Right. And if you did 6 rounds, if you did less than 6 rounds, the house would be empty the next time. The people demanded 6 8-minute rounds at least.
Wow.
You do around 8 minutes, and then the other matches, it would be 8 5-minute rounds. You know, the main event would be 8 8s, and the other matches would be 8 5s. Now, when I started, it was amateur wrestling up to intermission. And then there'll be 3 main events, 3 professional matches. That's how it went.
Yeah, I remember that. I just it was so awkward for me, you know, breaking in and a time limit match where there's, you know, you just go straight through. And then, as you know, Jim Barnett had a deal with Steve where he would send some of his crew over to New Zealand, you know, like every other week for a big show. So I got sent over with Bobo Brazil a couple of times and learned how to drink Canadian Club on the way over there. And the great thing about it, at Custom back in those days, you could buy a quart of Crown Royal Canadian Club, which was Bobo's favorite choice of drink, for like $3 for a quart, John, or 2-liter bottle, I think it was. So it was perfect. But yeah, having to adjust to round system, you know, because you get the people going, you know, you got 8 minutes, so we're used to those soundbite matches. So you get the people going in 8 minutes, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a round, and you got to start all over again.
And if you don't have a tag partner in a tag, you could, while the round was in recess, you could sneak around. One could argue with the referee, and the other guy could sneak around and get a few shots in. But in singles, it would go cold, and you'd have to start building it up again.
Right.
Unless you left the guy laying completely down at the end of the round. It was 4 ropes too. Going through the ropes.
Yeah, that was very difficult. Yeah.
You get your head caught, you get your arm caught.
John, you ever work in a ring with 4 ropes?
Never with 4 ropes.
Man,
we had in Europe. In Europe, we had rounds, and they had especially in Hanover and Bremen, they had an apron that was about 1 yard wide. So you talk about street, you go to the top rope, you don't make it to the floor. It was one of these old top rings, but it's kind of that British system of rounds. So, but no, never the 4 ropes, but the rounds we did all the time.
They were so difficult getting in and out of the ring. Luke, who did you guys have? I mean, you just the local guys, or you guys get an influx of Europeans, or I know Barnett, when Barnett came down, but you broke in before Jim actually came in.
Mainly European. George Gordienko. George Gordienko. There's Rasputin, Wild Angus Campbell. I don't know whether he worked in Kansas City and around the country. Les Thornton, you know Les Thornton well.
Oh yeah.
A good cat. He's dead now. Sorry.
Yeah, Les is
fun. And you know, a lot of British guys from and Europe. Now Andre, I'm moving forward anyhow. I don't want to move so fast forward. In 72, Jim left Australia, and Larry Day and Ron Miller took over with the family, the Fullers,
I was on one of those last cruises for Barnett, Luke,
Yeah.
right
And
before he sold it.
And when Barnett, when he in 72, that's I wasn't there then. I'd already come over here. In 72, that's when Jim Barnett put 10-minute rounds or 12-minute rounds, and that was the whole match. You know what I mean? He changed the whole system, and he got the 3 ropes back in. But going back in the 60s, Andre came over to New Zealand, or Gene Ferree came over to New Zealand in 69, 70. I've got a photo with he was like 350. He looked skinny. You know what I mean? But we Butcher me worked handicap matches around the country with him and tags with Steve Rickard and Andre.
Yeah, and Steve Rickard was an Olympian for New Zealand that ended up coming back after the war and buying the territory, right?
Yeah, Steve Rickard was the drunk. Yeah. I shouldn't say, he's dead now, but I could tell you a lot of stories. Mark Lewin and King Curtis.
Oh yeah. Oh, tell us more about Andre. When Andre was coming down, was he a great athlete in the ring there, or was he just beginning? How was he?
Yes, he was an athlete, mate. He was still, not green, because he'd been working. He hadn't worked in England much either. Only a couple of times. He'd mainly worked in Europe, and you know how Europe was then. There was still rounds back in Europe and that, and when we learned too, it was a lot of mat work. I worked with semi-professionals when I first started with cauliflower ears, buckled noses. You know what I mean? It was mat work, none running to the ropes and doing stuff off the ropes. You learned how to take a guy, knock up, take a guy down, and do a series of moves back up on the feet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you were saying also there was no kicking and punching, right? So it was mostly takedowns and maneuvers to get the guys down from your feet, not from the ropes or from hitting or kicking.
No, hardly hit the ropes. Never hit the ropes more or less. Hit the turnbuckles and that, but not the ropes, and come off with lines. It wasn't until I went to Australia and when we went to Australia that we learned how to punch and kick. You know what I mean? Because Jim Barnett had heavy artillery in there. Heavy. Right. And I'm talking about the Von Erichs, the Tanaka and Fuji, Abdullah, Big Bad John. They had all heavy, Buddy Austin, Brute Barnard, heavy hitters those days in the 60s.
What was the four ropes that
hold on and then pound the guy to death, grab a hold and make the guy work out of it, and then pound him to death. It wasn't until when I came back in the mid 70s, when I came down to New Zealand to do the TV, and I worked Australia. They were doing all the Fullers were there with them, and it was high spot. That's when it was high spot time. But Jim Barnett's, it wasn't high spots. You know what I mean?
Was the four ropes just in New Zealand, or was it also in Australia? Because I wouldn't even. You say you didn't run them. When there's 3 ropes, it's easy because when you hit the ropes, you put your arm over, your hip kind of gets on the middle rope and slingshots you off. With 4 ropes, I wouldn't have any clue how to run them. How difficult was it? And did you guys just not use them? Did you guys just not run the ropes much?
No, we didn't. We did mainly chain wrestling.
And in Australia, when I was there anyway, they switched to 3 ropes. I don't know if they were ever 4 ropes, but they were 3 ropes because Barnett had brought the American style in Australia before they did it in New Zealand.
So you said Steve Rickard had a little bit of a fascination for the bottle, huh?
He was a publican. He was an ex-detective. He hated drugs, and that. But he was a drunk, you know what I mean? I can tell you stories of him in the ring, drunk and falling out of the ring, and the police on the outside, and all you could smell was booze,
Was it pretty rugged? Was it pretty rugged back in those days? I mean, shoot style. And I know when I went over there were a lot of Samoans on the card, so I know there was an influx of Samoans starting to work at that time. I'm talking late 71, 72, into 73.
Yeah, well, Butch and me left early 72.
Okay.
So we came over to North America then. And that's funny part is,
Did you guys come over for the Funks when you first come over to America, or did you go somewhere else? Stu, where'd you go?
We lost him.
He went to America, man. Where'd you go,
He wanted to
bud?
talk about America. He wanted to talk about New Zealand, but he didn't want to talk about America.
See, folks, it's just not me. John blames it on me every week, but I did nothing this week. There you are. We're seeing you now. Turn your phone the
There you
other way
are.
there. You got
What
a
happened
call.
there?
You got a damn turn your phone the
Turn
other
your
way.
phone, you're sideways.
I am sideways.
Yeah, you always
Okay,
been
well, turn it and
sideways.
turn it.
No, I've got the phone parallel.
Turn it the other way then.
Okay, now turn it back and see if it corrects. There you go.
There you go. See?
Perfect.
Perfect. Now
See how smart my partner is?
yeah. Hey,
You were talking about how great football is. No, that football is the greatest.
no,
sport
no,
ever.
no, no.
That's what you're talking about.
The territory we came into. Actually, Andre came over to North America to a company called Grand Prix in Montreal, owned by the Vachons and Edward Carpentier, the Flying Frenchman.
Now,
And-
is that how you guys got your opportunity through Andre? Andre put in a good
No. Steve had talked. We wanted to come away, and Steve told Butcher and Mad Dog. He knew them both, and that's where we came in. We came into that Montreal territory too. That was our first territory, and when we got there, they were running 3 towns a night, and the Rougeaus were running 1 town a night. So that's how much wrestling was going on in Ontario and Quebec.
Wow, that's amazing. And when did you and Butch, were you and Butch a tag team at this point? And when did you guys first become a tag team?
66.
And what made you guys become a tag team?
Well, how it come? Those days we'd have, as I said, there was only 3 matches in a card, and then there was 4 matches. And that I'd do a single, Butch would do a single, and then we'd come back after intermission and do a tag. The heavyweight man, one main event, and that's all. That's how the card was. 3 singles, 2 singles before intermission, and then a tag after intermission, and then the title match, the world title match, whatever.
How did you first run into Butch? I mean, how did you guys become lifelong friends like you become?
Well, he started with a guy who was friends in the gym, in the YMCA. He met a guy and he started training with him and that. And the guy says, I'm going to run a few shows, and took him with him to run a few shows, but the shows were dead. And then he was introduced to our gym, and he came down and that and worked out in our gym. And next minute he's in the ring with us. This was before Steve Rickard. This was for the guy, John De Silva. Before 1966, we'd only run so often when they brought a European over. The first American that I really met over there was the Destroyer, Dick Beyer. He came over there in the early 60s, and then, of course, worked as Dick Beyer and as the Destroyer. And so those days, we'd run, when someone came in like that, we maybe run 2 or 3 shows a week for about 3 weeks or a month. Then the guy would leave. In 1966, John De Silva come back. He was over for the Empire Games in England. He became a medalist, and then he turned pro in England, came back and opened New Zealand up 7 days a week in 66. And that's when
7 days a week. Luke, I hate to cut you off, but this is so interesting to me. I mean, you're in a country now, and TV hadn't quite caught on yet, right?
TV wasn't even in the country, mate.
TV wasn't
even in the country.
And so you guys were running these 6 7 shows just by word of mouth
posters
and local
Yeah,
promotion and old school posters and flyers and stuff.
Radio. And
Radio.
we'd go to the town, we'd do a town and then travel through the night to the next town. So the newspapers would come and photo us in the morning and put a big thing on the sports page that we're in town for. So we'd get the publicity that way. Everyone would buy the local rag, you know, it came out at 4 in the afternoon. So we'd get on that local rag, get in the town early in the morning, get on the local rag, and the posters would be put up a couple of weeks beforehand in the town. And if they wanted to, we'd go down to the radio and one of the guy from overseas would talk on the radio.
Wow. So when did TV actually hit where you guys were getting a wrestling show? Was it Australia you were getting, or was it later?
We didn't get. TV started in 67, started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and finished at 8 o'clock at night.
The whole network.
And then it went to 9 o'clock at night. Top Cat was the main, at 8 o'clock, Top Cat. That was the main fucking.
Was Tony Garea around then as well? Or
what's that, John? What's that, JBL?
I'm sorry. Was Tony Garea around back then? When was Tony Garea in New Zealand?
Tony Garea went to work in Australia. He was from Auckland. Butch and me had his first matches with him, and then he went to Australia, and Jim Barnett liked him, and then he went back and forth to Australia. Next minute he was in. Jim Barnett had him in Florida. And I think he had a short stint in Carolinas and then straight up to New York. And he was from 75 or 74 in New York to 212, 230.
So you guys had a third match with it. How was it? Tell us a little about it. We want to get on Tony here a little bit. So give us a scoop about how Garea was in his first 3 or 4 matches.
I can't remember, mate.
It was that memorable, huh? So like JBL's first and second.
I guarantee you this though, Jerry. Whatever Tony made in his third match, he still has that money.
He still got it in his damn bank account in New Zealand.
That man's getting every dime he's ever made.
He's got.
I was with Tony a couple of weeks ago, Luke. Not to cut you off, but I did. But I was with him a couple of weeks ago doing one of these virtual shows like you were talking about earlier. And Tony and I were talking about, you know, how long we'd met each other and everything, you know, and I said, Tony, I said, you know, here's your chance to dispel some of those myths about you never paying a toll. He said the guy was telling the story, probably never paid a toll. He said, I paid my tolls. I said, sure. And I asked him to buy me a soda, and he said he didn't have any change. but so he didn't. You don't remember much about it, but Tony was a heck of an athlete and looked fantastic for the part. Because I remember when I first met him, he'd just come to Florida, and he looked like a special athlete.
Yeah, he was as I said, he was a good rugby league player. You know, top in the club, and he was an athlete.
Why do you think Steve Rickard never made it to the States? Because he was the owner and he liked to booze too much, or what?
No, he came in and out of the States.
Did
he? In NWA meetings and did a few shows around the country.
I know he made the NWA meetings. Matter of fact, I was going through a deal and I found a NWA membership roll and Steve's listed on there.
Yeah, because he bought it way back to New Zealand. And it was NWA. New Zealand was NWA, and that's so.
Because I know my brother went down and defended the title with it for him and with him.
Yeah.
So anyway, you make it now. Steve had called Montreal, and then you made that big journey in Montreal, your first time ever in North America, right?
Yeah, we'd worked Japan, we'd worked Singapore, Bangkok, and all that area, you know, in Australia, but we had never been over to, and we used with the magazines. I'd see magazines, American magazines, and we knew that this was the place to come to.
Did you guys get those old After magazines down in New Zealand too?
Yeah, George Napolitano and Apter.
Yeah.
George is a very close friend of mine.
George is a great guy. Yeah. So you got those old Wrestling Reviews and Wrestling Illustrated magazines.
Yes.
So that was your communication. So you were seeing these photos of these guys. Most of the cover photos back in those days for shock value. Some guy face was a crimson mass, bleeding all over everything, right? So what do you guys think about that? Did you get blood? Was there blood in Australia or New Zealand at the time?
No, very rarely.
If it was the hard way, right?
Yeah, but it was the hard way.
And what do you think when you saw all those magazines with the blood all over them? Are those a bunch of stiff blokes or what?
Mate, that's going so far back, mate. I'm an old fart. I'm mid-70s.
Well, hey, I'm older than you, and I remember seeing those magazine covers and scaring the heck out of me, man. You see Brute Menard.
Wait a minute. Blood. You claim you're old, but you're still wrestling. So don't give us this crap about you being old.
I loved old Brute Menard. Buddy Austin. That Buddy Austin was crazy. You know,
I had some of my first matches in Australia, Buddy Austin. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. he was crazy. You talk about somebody who liked the booze. Bud Rowe was in the booze quite a bit beforehand. You know?
It was a match.
Drake. Last week we were talking about Eddie Graham down here in Florida flying the plane while he was drinking. And, but it's no worse than getting in the ring with Buddy Austin or Brute Menard when they've been drinking. Was you ever a part of the flight when Eddie was on the booze?
We ended up in Ocala one night, from Miami to Ocala.
And you were going to Tampa, right?
No, we're coming home from Miami.
And you landed in Ocala. That's about 200 miles down the way, man.
Yeah, it's 150, 120 past Tampa.
See, John, I'm not the only one.
Oh my God! Wait a minute! Did you land in Ocala?
No. I don't know how he turned around and came back.
Was he going to land in Ocala?
I don't even know he knew we were there.
He probably did.
This just drives me. This is insane. Does it not bother you to get it with there with the pilot that is? So
it does now, John, but it did back then. You just wanted to get home. You wanted to save that 6-hour Miami trip because back then we had no interstates. We Highway 41. You get on those 2 days to go through Alligator Alley. Dodge alligators and the damn water moccasins.
Alligators.
So that 20-minute flight was a hell of a lot more appealing, even with a drunk pilot.
So you're thinking if you live, you get home pretty quick.
Yeah, well, you've been behind the wheel, and we're all dumbasses got behind the wheel with a guy just as drunk as Eddie was behind the wheel of the damn airplane, And they usually sitting in that co-pilot seat, somebody had a little bit of experience,
Like Terry Funk.
I didn't know that Eddie drank while he was flying. I knew he was a drinker, but no, I never knew. I said he wouldn't drink while he was driving or flying. Little did I know. He didn't fly unless he was drunk.
Yeah. And he was good at it too, wasn't
he? He landed a couple times at the wrong place, didn't he?
Oh yeah. And like landed the wrong way. Landed the wrong way and took off the wrong way a few times.
He took off the wrong way to the airport.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry, what about Old Blue? The Old
Blue, yeah. We used to name our airplanes down there. We had Old Blue, old Red, and Old Orange. We had a lot of them down there. We had that tail dragger that caught on fire that time. Rocky Johnson jumped out of the airplane as we were taxiing down the highway. He saw smoke in the back of the airplane. He was sitting back by one of those old drop-down doors, and he dropped that damn door down, and as we were taxiing, and jumped out of the damn thing. And we went, "What the hell is he doing? He's crazy." All of a sudden, we saw the smoke coming out. We all wanted to jump out of the door too.
There wasn't a fire?
Yeah, there was a fire in the commode, man. Somebody been back there in the movie or something, I think.
You're kidding? Wait a minute. So somebody's smoking on the plane and gets the plane on fire?
Yeah, back
Rocky
in those
jumped
days,
out of the
back
plane?
on those days, you could smoke on commercial planes, so it wasn't anything.
I know, but you
unusual.
normally don't catch the plane on fire.
Yeah, normally.
JBL. These planes we're talking about, they go on the runway and they'd rattle as they went along the runway, and they go trying to get off the fucking ground, trying to get up into the air, and they growl trying to get up.
And they never paid any attention to how much you weighed, I mean, the guys, the wrestling crew get on there, and some of the biggest guys on there, and some of the biggest guys, stars in the country are on that damn airplane. If it gone down, they killed half the territories in the United States.
So what happened to the plane that caught on fire?
Oh, they pulled it over the side of the runway. The fire truck come out, put the commode out, and we got back on the airplane, flew to Miami.
Did Rocky get back on?
Yeah, he got back on. Yeah, he wanted to get to Miami.
So Rocky jumped out going down the tarmac.
We're going down the runway, man.
Going down the runway?
We're taxiing out to take off. We all kidded Rocky if we'd been up off the, would you jump out? He said, hell yes.
So then you put the fire out and Rocky just gets back on the plane and you guys
He
take
just
off.
gets back on the plane. We all just get back on the plane like it's another Wednesday,
That doesn't seem normal to me.
Luke, back me up on this, man.
Yeah, mate. Crazy things back in those days, mate. We started telling you some of the crazy things, and the ribs were heavy. Anyone today, they'd be crying. They'd leave the business. These people had when they ripped each other, they were heavy, weren't they, Jerry?
What was your favorite rib there?
Mine, well, the Hearts kids with a what's it called now? The name of it, with the husband comes home, catches the guy.
Oh, Mabel.
The Mabel rib.
Yeah.
I was involved in one of those one time.
You was involved in one of them? Wow.
I wasn't involved. I was at the party when they set it all up, and the guy went right through the glass window. And I heard gunshots in the bedroom. Next minute, I look out and the guy's running out with no clothes.
So what? So explain to us the rib.
The Mabel.
Yeah.
Jerry, you do the honors here.
Okay. Well, when a new kid would come into the territory or business, the girls, they were everywhere back in those days, and guys took liberties with them. So they set it up where there'd be this gorgeous woman come to the masses. Of course, a young guy, hey, who is that? That's Mabel. I'll fix you up with her. She lives out in the country. She's married to a truck driver. We're all going to have a big party out her house later, because her husband on one of these cross-country stints, and they won't be back for a few days. Okay, where? So you write down the direction. It's always way the hell out in the country, some old farmhouse or something like this. You go out there, there's a few guys, part of the guy comes in, there's Mabel. And the kid, they get attached to each other. Pretty soon they disappear. As soon as they disappear, in comes the husband from the long truck drive with a gun. He's blasting it. All of a sudden he kicks in the door, while the guy's in there with supposedly his old lady. Mabel, damn it, I knew you were messing around with me. The damn wrestler fires off around. Of course, the guy gets up. It caused mental issues with Don Jardine, the spoiler. They did it to him up in Canada somewhere, and he was mentally unstable from then on out about this. And of course, the guy would take off running. The guy would sit there, fire off 3 or 4 shots. So, he'd run all the way back into town, usually naked,
So this rib was done so often, it actually had a name.
It had a name. Yeah, you got Mabel, right?
Yeah, you got Mabel.
Yeah. Same thing happened at a party. The Hearts. The Hart kids were bad. The Dean is dead now, the little one. But they were bad at doing a Smith crazy ribs, you know what I mean? Coke too, putting little sachets of Coke in a guy's pocket in the dressing room while he's in the ring. These are guys that come into the territory and they think they're hot shots, and that think their shit don't stink, and they're shit house workers. You know what I mean? They have a police car on the highway, police car, the things you light, you sit up on top of the roof that flashes, the magnetic one goes on the roof, you can put it on the roof. We're going on the highway and we've got the guy in the car with us, and these two guys pull us over, friends of Hearts, but they're in suits and they're in a Ford, whatever it is now, same as what the police cars were wearing, but it was a private, and they pulled us over, the light flashing, and they said, they've heard that there's guys carrying drugs, so they search us all. They come to this guy and they find these little sachets of sugar, icing sugar, Coke, and that. Now we're out in the country and it's the middle of winter. They handcuffed them to the side of the road to a fence post. And they said, we'll come back and get you. And they never come back, left the guy there.
They say, oh, I just got a call. Hang on right here while the guy's handcuffed. We'll be right back. And of course they take off and they never come back.
And they
somebody eventually comes along and lets the guy out. But that happened out in Yeehaw Junction, Yeehaw Junction, I mean, there's a stretch of Highway 60 that for like 70, 80 miles ain't nothing but Texas cow pastures. I mean, all you can see for miles is cows, kind of like Texas.
Yeehaw Junction.
Out on that Highway 60 is where all these things happen, right, Luke?
Yeah, isn't the Highway 60? Yeehaw Junction is where that big lake is, where they used to have a monstrous gator in it.
Yeah.
A monster, yeah.
Yeah, they had like a 15, 17-foot gator in the damn thing. We used to tease guys about throwing them in, especially the Texas guys, But there was a lot of fun back there. So you're up and now you're up in.
Wait a minute. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Well, I'm still here, John. I'm still here too. And most of the guys I ribbed are still here or died of natural causes.
And one of the worst ones, JBO, was Jay York and Greg's father, Greg Valentine's father.
Johnny.
Jay York came back from a match to the ring and he used an atomizer, inhaler. And Greg's father put ether in it. Johnny Valentine to put ether in it. So Jay York, I don't know whether you know.
Here's a guy that can die of asthma, and Johnny Valentine putting ether in his atomizer or whatever.
You heard of Jay York? Do you ever heard of Jay York, mate?
Yeah, the Alaskan.
John.
Yeah. Oh, John.
I knew Johnny. I didn't know Jay York. No, I knew Johnny through Greg. I wrestled Greg some in Texas, and Johnny came around.
There was two brothers called the Alaskans, and this guy was in the Vietnam War, and he worked with detonators and all that sort of stuff, blowing up stuff. Anyhow, this atomizer, when he came back from the ring and breathed it in and knocked him flat to the floor, right? And then the next day, when Valentine was coming to the show, all the boys had those Halliburton aluminium cases at the time, with their wrestling gear in. So, 26 inches, 30 inches by 25 inches, and, about a foot deep or 9 inches deep. They carried the gear in that. I hear that I wasn't there, of course, but I hear that fucking Jay York went up to it with a shotgun and blew that right out of fucking Valentine's hand. This is a guy that blew up cannons in town squares and sit in a hotel room and he ignited it just for pranks, get high as hell and blow up shit in town squares.
Jay was
I don't think those guys would survive today.
Jay was a little shell shocked, John. I mean, truthful. I mean, legit.
Yeah.
Too.
Johnny, I always told, because Johnny, I knew Johnny through Greg, that he would Scandal Agbar used to tell me, or Murdoch would tell me, he'd break off the knobs in a shower and leave the showers on hot. Johnny had such strong hands that he would literally break off the stuff, and that way nobody could shower.
Yeah, there were some brutal ribs back there. Yeah, I mean, you had to, guys nowadays, JBL threw me out of the locker room, Why? Because I'm an idiot. Well, back then, all you did was you ribbed the shit out until they left the locker room on their own accord.
Right.
And a lot of them left and never came back, right, Luke?
That's right, mate. As I said before, the guys couldn't take it today. The talent out there, it would be too much for them.
I don't know. Maybe some of them got better ribs than we pulled. I mean, our ribs were barbaric. They were good for their time, but they wouldn't fly today. We'd all be in jail for some law.
Yeah. Boy, when I first went to Montreal, mate, the Hollywood Blondes, Dale Roberts and Jerry Brown. Now, there's a couple of people that were wild, and they were making super money because, as I said before, the territory was on fire. Now, this was 71, 72, and they would throw furniture out of 6 floors. There would be rows of cars on Maisonneuve Avenue, the main St. Catherine ran here. The next street over was all the main traffic was three lanes each way. And they were 8 floors up in apartment buildings, and they would throw furniture out and laugh and watch it bounce off roof of cars and cars. This is the shit that they did. You know what I mean? They come out of a bar and drunk as cunts, and Jerry would get in front of a car, and Buddy would run him, and he'd backdrop the guy onto the hood of the car. The bonnet or the hood, and the bonnet would go back down like this, and they'd laugh and just go on to the next car. You know what I mean?
This is your first tour to the North America from New Zealand, where you guys were civilized down there compared to.
Hey,
what did you guys think of all this? Did you, wow, this is great, I fit right in here, or wow, what did I get myself into?
Hey, our sidewalks closed up at 6 o'clock at night, mate. The bars closed at 6:30. You had to be out. The only way you could get a drink when we left, if you were staying at a hotel and they had a house bar. You know what I mean? Because the bars downstairs, all the pubs you stay in, the public bars would be downstairs, 6:30 closing time. It was a different world. Right. And then all of a sudden we're in a country where we can go into a place at 11 o'clock, at 12 o'clock at night, get a meal, get a bottle of wine. Montreal, the food was great and the women were beautiful.
Luke, I didn't realize that the Montreal territory was that hot, that you had 3 nights a week running.
JBL, and I didn't know up to about 10 years ago. The early 70s, Maple Leaf Gardens and Quebec were the hottest area in the country from 70 to about 74. That was the hottest area in North America for wrestling.
That's amazing, because you don't think about that. You think about the Northeast territories. You think about the ones that are, famous, like Crockett and some in Texas. Well, was Pat Patterson? Pat Patterson was from there. Did you ever run into Pat at all in Montreal, or had he already left and gone to San Francisco?
No, he was down in San Francisco by then. But the talent was unbelievable. I can't think of the names of the talent, and all of them had been down in Australia with Jim Barnett.
Some of the Vachon's days, right? Vachon's was very hot back in those days too.
What? Who? Where?
Vachon.
The Vachons.
Oh yeah, the Vachons.
Yeah. And then they had the Rudy K, the K brothers.
Yeah, that was
Leo Burke, the Beast, and all those guys. They were hot.
That was in the Maritimes, and obviously, and the opposition to them was Emile Dupree. Emile Dupree was running off Grand Prix Wrestling, the company that Andre and us were working for. He had a pilot, and he was using the tapes up in New Brunswick against the Burks, because there's 2 territories running in the Maritimes at that time. Emile and Rudy Kay, or the Leo Burke and that. There's 4 brothers, because we had all those brothers in New Zealand. They all came down to New Zealand for when I came back to do television in New Zealand in '75. That's when On the Mat, Steve Rickard got On the Mat. He had all that French connection there. You know, he had Rick Martel plus the Rudy Kay, the Beast.
Rick must have just started at that time, then.
Beg your pardon?
Rick must have just started in the business when they were there. Rick Martel.
Rick Martel came on his. Michelle Martel was working for the K's in 1973, and he came for school holidays to work with his brother there. He was young, 15 or 16, and he went home after the spring break or summer holidays and told his mother that he was becoming a wrestler. That was it. That was 74.
So you guys hadn't morphed into the bushwhackers or sheep herders at the time. You were still.
We were the Kiwis.
You were the Kiwis then. Okay. I remember the Kiwis. I worked with every one of the Kiwis, the bushwhackers, and the sheep herders.
Yeah. AJ, and there's Abe Jacobs too. He was one of the original Kiwis. Pat.
Abe was.
Abe, well, you Abe from Carolinas.
Yeah, I know an Abe forever. Yeah.
You're a good guy.
Yeah. Abe is like 92 years old now, and he's still kicking.
Is he? God bless him. Yeah, but
he's not working every weekend like you are.
Pat O'Connor was from New Zealand too, but he wasn't so nice when he came to tour back he came down there in about 68. He shit on everybody. People drove 60 miles or 80 miles from his hometown to Wellington to see him, and that because they did a little private party afterwards, and he just ignored them. You know, they were in the same class as him in school.
So after you left Canada, where'd you end up? You guys have made it.
After a year and a half, they said, we'll have to start jobbing you. People, they'd be putting us over. We were the main tag in one of the towns every night. We got a break straight off we were lucky. The main heel there was Killer Kowalski, who we knew from Australia, and Andre was the main baby face, and then we fitted in. We worked with Andre and Capontier, and we worked with the Italians, Dino Brito and Gino Bravo. And then, and that's all we worked with, and the Vachons. For the year.
Were you guys baby face or heels at that time?
Heels. Crazy heels. And they said, you can stay, but we'll have to start getting another fresh team in, and you'd have to start. And they said, but we can book you out somewhere. And they said, we've got your book. If you want to go, you can go to this territory called Stampede. We never heard of Stampede. We never heard of Stu Hart. So 1970s, late 73, we arrived. This is a good story. We arrived at Stampede, and we stay at the hotel downtown Calgary, where the boys have been staying for 20 years, the Calgarian, or next door to it. And we arrived on a Thursday. Friday, you do the pavilion. Now, the pavilion is in the fairgrounds, and there's the corral too. The corral held about 10 or 12,000. The pavilion held 3. That's where they sold the cattle and all that. And you did TV there on a Friday night, which showed at 10 o'clock Saturday morning. So we're in the ring. The first night we meet Goldie, Archie. He's the booker, the Mongolian stomper. We're working against the champions, and we're getting DQ'd. Right? And so we're in the ring. Stu's not there or anything other. We don't know about the 4 girls and the 8 boys. We got no idea about that. And we're in the ring. We're getting decued. We're hitting them with our flagpole. We got New Zealand flagpole or chain, and the two champions. We got juice on them. Next minute, these fucking kids get thrown in the ring, and the guy's yelling out, "Beat him up, champ! Beat him up, champ!" Those words you may have heard quite a few times when I tell you, "Beat him up, champ." Now, two of these kids are bleeding, and two are not. The guy had gigged them, so that's giving you a good idea who it is, and he's telling us to beat him up. Fucking Abdullah is throwing these kids into us and telling us to beat him up.
I throwing Stu's kids and telling you about them. Was Bret one of them? was Bret and Owen one of them? A couple of them?
Yeah, they're between 11. They're between 11 and 13, 10 and 13. You know, Owen's too young. It's not Owen. He's still a baby. Anyhow, we
wouldn't make any difference to Abdullah.
Yeah. So we leave the ring, and there's 6 guys laying there, and we start walking back, and we get to the chute, you know, to go down to the dressing rooms. There's the heel dressing room and the babyface dressing room on either side, and the front of the chute, there's this guy about 5'10", 5'11", a thick, stocky-looking guy with fucking rough-looking hair, and then he says, "What the fuck are you doing? They're my kids. This is Stu. This is our first introduction to Stu. What the fuck are you doing? They're my kids." and he's most probably laughing to himself because he was a big ribber. Stu was a big ribber.
You didn't have to go to the dungeon over that, did you?
No. Not a stories at Stu's home, no. Been at Stu's home for dinner numerous times. Because when Archie left, we were left in charge of the place. And some
Wait,
days
you guys were left in charge of the place?
Oh, well, there's the territory, you know, like put the things together and the matches and for the week and that. And we go to Stu's on Sunday. So I know about, but Stu, I see Stu would get big guys down on the floor there, and he wouldn't take the hold. He would tell them to get on their hands and knees. Then he would put the hold on and then tell them to fight out of it. And they would shit themselves, or their eyes, the veins in their eyes would pop. You know what I mean?
Most of those holds are designed when you put them on, they really don't hurt, but when you fight them is when they start hurting, right?
Yeah. Now, Stu was thick in the hips, and you know down the heart. You know how thick he was in the thighs and the hips. You couldn't, once he was on top of you or there, you couldn't move him. You know what I mean? You could go, but he was just.
As Terry Funk would say, he's got childbearing hips.
Yeah. Yeah. Childbearing hips. I seen him do that on numerous guys down in the dungeon. God bless.
But yeah. you guys weren't part of that.
No.
Good.
No. But we were in that
was an interesting territory, a wild territory, and you know what? For where it was very successful for many years, and spawned so many great international stars out of that territory. Yeah. Also,
I remember traveling with Harley, 120 miles an hour. Harley's got a dozen beer beside him, and he's got a gun in his hand. He's drinking beer, firing out, and driving the car all at once. Drinking beer, bang, 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 120 miles an hour. But back in those days, Harley was wild.
He was invincible, man. He was bulletproof and invincible.
Yes, he was. Well, you know him from those days.
Oh, yeah. I've been reared in by him at 100 miles an hour going down an interstate with no lights on.
He rear-ended you?
Oh yeah, that was one of Harley's favorite ribs. Remember, he would come up if you were traveling on the road. He would come up. He would kind of get where you're back in those days. You had CB radio, so you kind of keep track where everybody was. So Harley would keep track of you. Then all of a sudden he'd turn out of his lights and speed up. And you'd be going along 70, 80 mile an hour. All of a sudden, boom, from the rear end, it's Harley busting you, man.
Crazy. You can imagine doing it to some of the people today.
Oh yeah.
You know, Wyndham got that from Harley.
Right. They all did. Everybody, that was Harley gig, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Barry was Barry was notorious behind the wheel.
Well, you know my story, Barry. We landed in an orange tree right across the street here.
In a tree, right?
Yeah, in a tree. Yeah.
You landed your truck in a tree. Yeah.
Not on his little red wagon Dodge truck, one of those super sport the Hemis before the Hemis come out, man. They're more powerful than the Hemi. We busted across the street. We hit the top of the tree. The tree dropped over. I mean, we knocked the tree over, but we landed right on the top of the tree.
Crazy.
And then pushed the damn thing out somehow before the cops got there. And I only lived
Wait,
half a
it was
mile
stuck
away.
in the tree.
We weren't like, like here's a tree and we're on top of it. The tree had, of course, when we hit it, it bent over. So the tree was underneath the truck. Yeah. Wheels are off the ground. So we had to get the back wheels down on the ground so we could get out of the damn place before the cops come.
How'd you get the tree down? Did you shake it? The truck?
Oh, we just got in the back of the bed of the truck, started jumping up and down, and pretty soon it just, and we're on the ground. So we started Barry's pushing, and I'm backing.
What did you do? Hit the dip in the road and take off?
We hit the dip in the road. It said there's a big sign there, and I'm telling Barry there's a dip here, and all of a sudden there's that sign, beware dip in the road. We used to call them snuff streets. You'd drive a block and take a dip. And man, when we hit that dip, we got launched because we were going so damn fast. And then I warned him about it, but Barry, he don't listen.
And now you're stuck in a tree.
Now we're stuck in a tree. We got to figure out how to get the hell out of there before cops come.
Well, now, when you opened the door, were you like above? You're still in the tree.
We were about 3 foot off the ground. And it wasn't bad. I mean, it's a nice little drop off. When you're intoxicated, you can't feel a whole hell of a lot when you jump out. But we figured out how to get that truck out of that damn grove real quick, man, because we didn't want to get in trouble. About the time Barry turned into the driveway there, you could see lights starting to come around to where we busted the tree over.
So somebody heard the tree break and called the cops?
They called the cops, yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah, we're just another Friday night, out in Odessa.
I got a Friday night special too.
Let's hear it, man.
I got a Friday night special too.
Let's hear it.
I've got the attack. I've got Carlos, and I got Al Perez, and I've got Chicky Star from Puerto Rico, and Manny Fernandez.
Oh my goodness!
They're all the Latin connections, and we're going to a show northeast of Austin. We pass, when we're going up to the show, we pass all these Brahmas on the side of the road, but they're in the grass on the side of the road. Maybe one male, 1,800, all the rest are 1,400 to 1,500 females. On the way back from the show, we're hitting it. Butch and me, we're doing about 80, 90. Manny's in front of us. He's going to be touching there 90 to 100. He comes around a bend and hits the fucking Brahma. He's lucky the thing didn't roll on the bonnet, on the hood of the car. He hit it and it went down, Now he's stuck. The rest of them get out of the car. It's a Cadillac. And the engines come back, but he's frozen in the fucking seat. He just frozen, shock, you know what I mean? Butch actually has to pull him out. He's not hurt, he's in shock. The fucking Brahma is lying down the road with broken legs. Butch goes up, tries to put a freaking four on it. Anyhow.
Well, we get in trouble for this, John.
Yeah.
The limitations have got to be over with.
I think the statute of limitations out, at least in Texas.
Hey, anyhow, after this, and tells the police, tells the next town, tells the policeman. So the policeman comes and shoots a Brahma. Then he says, the driver of the car. And Manny says that. He takes Manny's license and he says, oh, you haven't paid these tickets and that, and you've got a warrant, and we're going to warrant out for you.
No.
They put him, the car's right off. They put him in the police car. and take him to the police station and lock him up. we put the other 3 Italian Latins in the car, and anyhow we went to the police station and they said we got him out, we bailed him out. But that was the night with crazy, just coming around at 90 miles an hour and hitting a Barama at that speed. We were lucky. That was a female one at the end. The guy said it was around 1400. The male, Butch, was driving out. The male, he was about that far from our window when we put the brakes on.
Wow.
He was 1,800 pounds. That was a scary night.
I guess.
Yeah.
So how did you end up from there in Joe Blanchard down in San Antonio?
How did I get to San Antonio?
Yeah, because you end up booking for Joe Blanchard in San Antonio, right? Was that during that time?
Yeah, but no, we went after. This was after being in Canada. We went home to New Zealand to do the TV in '75 when they got TV. Then we came back in '78, '79, and we were in Hawaii, Japan, and then we went for Don Owens in the Northwest, and we were up there for a year and a half. It was Roddy Piper and Rick Martel. We worked against them for about 40 months. Roddy Piper and Rick Martel, from Medford, the top of California, up to Vancouver, Canada.
And Piper's the one that brought you into the Northwest from Hawaii, right? He met you guys in Hawaii?
Yes, we were in Hawaii working in that, and he saw us work, and we said, we got to get out of here. Hey, it was good living there. We just kept our head above water. We weren't making any money, you know what I mean? We were keeping our head above water. Flying to 5 islands a week, living on the beach, gym and beach, and eating. And that was it. And smoking pot with King's son. Going up on Diamond Head when I was shooting Hawaii 5-0. Every night we would fly over Diamond Head and see them doing Hawaii 5-0. You know, the television show with Jack Lord.
Yeah.
And then it was just living the life, laying in the sun, and that was it.
So Hot Rod got you over to Oregon. That was a hell of a territory back in there. What talent that territory had, Fidel Sierra and all those guys. And
the era I was in, everybody came. Jimmy Snuka, Roddy Piper, Rick Martel, It was Skalski, Cowboy Ron Bass, and us. We all ended up we were all there at one time, and we all ended up in WWE.
Wow.
WWF.
That just shows you the territory, the power of that territory, and the talent that Don Owen brought in there. I didn't know till later, but Roddy told us we did 22 consecutive sellouts in Portland. That's one place, and in your career, sometimes you think back about it, that's one place I really wished I would have went is Oregon, during my career, but I never made it out on the West. And
a long way away, mate. As it's a long way away from everywhere.
Especially Florida.
Yeah, especially Florida. There was only one long trip, was Medford. That was the southern town. And of course, you've heard the stories of Don Owens' brother, Elton.
Elton paying to get shooters off, right?
Yeah, paying the shooters off. If I start telling the stories there, and
was you ever involved in it? Tell us how that would go down. We've heard different things on this. We know the story, right, John? Elton Owens would go to one of the guys, hey, I'll give you $5 if you'll take him down. Then go to the other guy, I'll give you $5 if you'll take him down. So let's hear some of it.
Okay, then. When we got there, he looked at Butch. And Butch wasn't like he was in WWF. He was about 240 then, big chest and big arms. He trimmed down a lot, and he looked at Butch and he says, hey, you can shoot. And of course, Butch is there. I started shooting at 7. And he says, oh, you didn't? Well, we have shoots here. And Butch says, yeah, I went out with my dad. I used to go pick hunting and deer hunting, shooting, you know what I mean? Bang, bang. Now, Elton come up to me and says, your fucking partner's got a bad attitude. Yeah. Elton had a shooting trophy, John, a trophy. They're sitting down, we'll talk about Salem. The rest of the dressing room was below the ring, underneath this little Salem, and it was notorious. You heard of Salem in Oregon, Salem?
Sure, yes, yes.
Yeah, and that the old hall was just like a theater, and you go underneath it for the changing rooms. Anyhow, he would talk to the guys in that. He'd pay 20 and 10. He'd get 2 guys to shoot. He'd pay 20 for the winner, 10 for the loser. And the referee, there'd be a minute shoot or 2, minute and a half, 2. And you'd go and lock up amateur style, you know, hook behind the neck and that. And then the referee would tap you on the shoulder, you'd break, and you'd go a lot professional. The fans all knew it. There's always the first or second match. He'd have a shoot. Now, Elton would be kneeling, and he'd have his arms crossed like that, have his chin on his arms, and on the apron of the ring, with his head under the bottom rope, or over, you know, around the bottom rope, and he'd be there. And he would come back and he said, fuck, I think Bill had it over Jim. You know, what do you think, boys? And we'd all say, oh, no, I think Jim would always put the other guy over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the boys would be 20-10. The boys would split it and take 15 each. You know what I mean? Now,
Did Elton ever wise up that the boys learned it?
No.
No.
Anyhow, sometimes it'd be it'd be a great shoot, and there'd be no finish. You know, they'd be real rugged. And we'd say, Elton, you know, come back. He said, oh boy, that was a hell of a. And I said, we'd all say, you better have it back, a return match. So we'd have the return, and it would be 30-20. Oh no, 10-20. Yeah, and then it'd be 30-20. And he'd have a return match. And if it was a great one, we'd all argue when they come back. And some of the boys would say, be on Elton's side, but the rest of them would be on the other guy's side, and would get them up to 3 times for a third time. Now Elton's paying out now. He's paying out 50 or 30 on top of their
more than a payoff, right?
Yeah. Now and Elton would pay them off, and we'd have a shooter's trophy. So the boys all broke that trophy up and glued it together just with crazy glue. So this night after he had the 3 of them, he said, well, you deserve the shooter's trophy. And he said, Billy, give it to us. Give me the trophy. And the guy went up and sort of knocked the trophy off the table and hit the floor and broke into pieces. Elton fucking cried.
Luke, how hot was Roddy Piper back in those days in Oregon? Was that when Roddy was first coming into himself and finding that character?
Yeah. He was hot. He was hot. When we came in, we changed him babyface because he was a heel at the time. That's when we put the fucking baby powder down his bagpipe. He went out and blew it and blew the bagpipes and all the fucking baby powder come out. And you know, Roddy would go out and play the bagpipes, and then he would play them out of tune to get heat. You know, when he was a heel. And Elton and all the people would boo. And Elton would go out and grab the mic. He says, I know you guys can't play it. He's doing his best. Why are you booing him? This is Elton. Elton was a drunk. He's sitting there with a clear glass. Hey, I've only just started on these stories. Sitting there with a clear glass, and it was either gin or vodka. And he would sip it all night. Anyhow. He would go he would be smoking a big cigar. He would put a cigar down on the table with the end of that, with the ashes sticking off the table, go upstairs. The boys used to grab the cigar, jam, Adrian Adonis or Roddy would jam it up their ass, turn it around, and put it back there. I was down after the match, grab the cigar, and he was walking around with it, and he'd be talking to them, oh, yeah, and then he'd go to put it near his mouth, he says, and have it near his mouth, he says, who the fuck shitting here? You know, he didn't know it was a cigar. Never pop it in his mouth. And now each each night, especially Monday night, he had a check jacket. You know, Pendleton is another town in Oregon which makes garmenting, cloth, and all suits and all that stuff. It makes cloth for a lot of factories that make suits and clothing. Pendleton is well known. And he had this check sports coat for Monday night. He'd walk past you and the boys would blade the back of the jacket. You know, back of the jacket. He'd come, and the next week he'd come and would say, "Hey, you haven't got your Monday night jacket on." He says, "But they don't make them like they used to. These are all falling to pieces on me." And he'd have, the next night he'd have another one on, and the boys would. His first wife, he used to come down and say, "Ellie, my first wife, I don't understand. I don't know how far can I go on this? Is this okay?"
You want.
Eldon would come down and he'd say to the boys, "I don't understand. The hair on Ellie's head is different than the hair on her pussy. The color." He would tell the boys that, but she's got big tits, hasn't she? He'd be so drunk, he'd be telling us that the hair was different. Hair on it. Yeah, anyhow, she died. She died, and the second wife was crazier. She was a drunk. We would have Piper or Martel handcuffed to a corner, and we're beating out the other. Would be beating on the other one, and the fans would be throwing shit into the ring. The other wife used to come into the ring with a mop and a bucket while the match is going on, and she'd be screaming at the people, "Stop throwing stuff!" And she'd be mopping the ring while we were in the middle of the match.
Wow. Who was you guys' opponents out in Oregon? Who did you guys work? Who did you guys work
with Roddy Pipe and Rick Martel? Would go in. We had Buddy Rose in our army. He was our flag bearer, and he saw an opportunity to get a longer run there. He was 10 years in that one territory. Right. And so they would bring an Andre, or they would bring in Jesse Ventura for 6-mans. You know, we'd do a week and they'd bring someone else in for 6-man, and then we'd go back to tags and singles. We stayed with them for maybe 14 months.
So after you had your run there, where did you guys end up going out of Oregon?
Yeah, it was straight to the Carolinas.
The Carolinas. Who was booking in Carolinas at that time?
The guy that Vince first had for WrestleMania.
George Scott.
Nice guy.
Yeah, George, great and a brilliant man too, a brilliant booker too.
I love the guy.
Who got you into Carolina? Piper or
Don?
Don.
You know, after run, he says after run he put us over because they put everywhere we went, the second night or the third night they put the straps on us. Uh-huh. So we were lucky. You know, we went down there and they put the pacifiers on us. The second week they put the Mid-Atlantic straps on us. The pacifiers.
Give you a belt, you won't bet about your payoff, right?
Snook and Ray Stevens had the world titles. You know, Jimmy Snook and Ray Stevens had the world titles, and we had the Mid-Atlantic.
You remember what year that was? About
80.
80.
Okay. 80.
And you had a short run there, right? And then you ended up in Florida from.
No. We didn't know that you never gave your notice to that. We didn't even realize we're on bloody US. We're on TBS, a satellite station. Butcher and me didn't even realize that. And and they put the belts on us. They're putting us over every night, like against Rocky Johnson. You know, tags. They're putting us over every night in places. And we got the call. We were on the road doing. Do you know Carolinas? You worked there, didn't you?
Right.
How many miles a week? 3,000.
At least.
Yeah, and then we got the call from Puerto Rico, from Frenchy Martin, who was down in New Zealand. He says, "We've got a spot here for you guys, and that, and you can make 2,000 a week, and that you only do 3 days a week."
That's a good deal. Puerto Rico is a great place to be.
we didn't know that you don't give notice to Jim Crockett. Jim Crockett, you wait for him to give you notice, and then he'll bring you back. So we gave him 6 weeks notice, and we found out, and then later on down the line, Dusty wanted to get us back in there because I worked against Dusty and Blackjack, and he tried to get Crockett to bring us back in. Crockett Crockett told him that we walked out on him
after a 6 week notice.
Yeah, we gave him a 6 week notice. We were there for 6 months.
Wow.
But we went to Puerto Rico.
So you hit Puerto Rico hot and heavy, man, and that's when the heat really started for you guys, right?
Yeah. And I came back. And then I came back to Puerto Rico. Then I went out to Puerto Rico, that short stint in Florida, and then Jerry Jarrett.
Memphis.
Yeah, we had one hell of a run there with the Fabulous Ones. They just put them together with Jackie Fargo.
That was when Kern, who was Kern?
Ken Lane.
Yeah, that's when they first teamed up too, right?
Music videos. They did music videos and everything.
They were so hot there, wasn't they?
They were making $2,000 a week in merchandise, and that on top of their wage.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an 82, mate. Unbelievable. Wow. You know, that was big money those days. And we were
you guys had a hot run with them all over the place, and
we were making $2,000 a week, approximately then 1,800 to 25 at that time. It was a hot place. Till Jerry Lawler did the takeover. Jerry Jarrett's away on holiday, and the TV guy, you remember that you heard about this with Jerry Lawler and the guy did the TV, the voiceovers, Lance Russell, and that they went and signed a new contract without Jerry on it. Yeah. And when Jerry was down the islands on a holiday, and Lawler had his own crew sitting in Mississippi to come in. So when he came back, there was a big change around. That's when Lawler had a percentage of Memphis, but then he got a whole percentage of the whole territory after that takeover. You know, that's when he got them, and that's when the other crew was moved out, and Jerry Lawler took over the book, and we weren't in Jerry Lawler's crew. we were gone.
You were gone. So is that the Florida date then? I'm trying to get you to Florida back big time.
Yeah, I know. We'd already been to Florida for the short stint after Puerto Rico.
Okay, after Puerto Rico.
That's when we come to that. That's when Dory was finishing up, and he was blowing off the territory. He had Tully there. He had his brother there, Terry there, and he was doing. It was he was blowing off everything, and that's when the mask guy took over, who had the school in Atlanta, the wrestling school.
I don't know.
WCW, yeah.
Jody Hamilton.
Jody Hamilton. That's when Jody Hamilton took the book when Funk left to go to Japan with Terry. Dory went with Terry back to Japan. That's when Jody came in and took the book.
Right. So you guys are our hottest heel team basically in the country there off of that Memphis run there. Is that when Vince first started eyeballing you guys, and is that where you started kind of saying, hey, WWE looked pretty good, WWF at the time looked pretty hot, let's go there?
I know it wasn't till I went. Then I went to Joe Blanchard and got the book there, and that's when I started selling tapes into Vince Senior. Those days. It was Betamax. Now that's going back. Right, yeah. Betamax.
Hey Luke, were you in with Joe Blanchard when he had the USA Network deal?
Yes.
So you had the book there with Joe, and then the story that I heard at least was they took it off when they had the cow shit matches, for lack of a better term, with Funk and Tully, right?
That was Terry Funk
What was that? You tell me what I had. That's one thing I've missed out on. Tell me a little bit.
That was the Scott Casey against Jaggers. Jaggers. He was in the Florida territory too.
Bobby Jaggers, yeah.
The man who was loose with the truth.
Yeah.
He's famous for it.
Yeah, but he told us he could water 270 pounds, and we're on the Hillsborough River, and Dory's boat, and there's Tony, me, and Dory, and Bobby Jaggers, the water ski, and Bobby's been telling us that he can water ski. We laugh at him. He goes out on those skis, and he's skiing on the river. He drops the skis and he's barefoot, and he's barefoot skiing. Now that's the only time he's told the truth. Anyhow, the cowboy thing that we were doing for Joe Blanchard, we're doing it in the little television place we did taping every Monday night. It was Scott Casey. It was horse against a horse, a ranch. You know, the winner gets a horse, and they had a bucket of cow shit there. He says, "Well, cow shit," but the boys had pissed in it, shit in the bucket, everything. And they had the horse, and they did this thing on USA Network where Bobby got out of hands and slaps Casey, and Casey picks up in the promo. There's two of them there, right, doing this verbal face to face, and Bobby Casey picks up the cow shit and jams it on fucking Bobby's head. Now, Terry's told Bobby, when he jams on the head, pretend it's got suction in it, and pretend you're trying to get it off, but the suction is stuck there. Now, all the shit and piss is dribbling down. The boys had loaded it up in the dressing room. And then, it was fucking terrible.
No good. So ESPN took you guys off the air, or what?
I think Vince did a deal with Joe. I don't know.
Because Joe had USA Network first, and then Vince ended up getting it from either what happened with the cow shit match, or somehow Vince got it right after that. But
yes,
so many people don't know that Joe Blanchard had the USA Network first.
Yes.
And then they brought you in to book after the cow shit match.
Yes, that was Tully. That was Tully doing that shit with Dory, with Terry. Terry was always on the phone. If you know Terry, the wild shit, Jerry knows him well. The wild shit that Terry comes up with is unreal.
Yeah. Many years, yeah. Terry. So okay,
all Dory's booking. It was Terry's mind.
Yeah.
Well, Luke, was that the end of Blanchard's territory when he lost the USA Network? I mean, was that kind of something unexpected? Was that what hurt the territory?
We still had NBC, and we still had Sin. We had Sin, a Spanish network. We still had two other networks. And that's when I started there. I was there for a year and a half. The worst thing I didn't do was turn babyface in the end. We all do make mistakes, you know, but we got that territory rocking and rolling. I had my babyface tag team was a Mexican, Manny Fernandez, and a redneck, Captain Redneck, Dick Murdoch. How's that for a tag team? A Mexican and a redneck in Texas.
You can't beat it. That's Texas right there.
And that was Texas, and we were on fire. With those two guys were on fire. And as you know, if Dickie didn't like anything, he could turn that match around. You know what I mean? He was a hell of a worker.
Dickie, well, you're looking at two guys right here that love and respect Dick Murdoch. I mean, he's probably one of the most unsung great workers of
yes. Those buggy whip arms, they were strong. That fist come around and knock you out.
Black Bart used to say he's built like an upside down light bulb.
Yeah.
Diggy had the worst body. He was a strong, tough Tough guy. He had
Strong
a
and
horrible
could-
body.
and could go. I mean, he was as quick as any 130 pounder out there, man.
That's right.
He could go.
He'd do the flying head scissor when he wanted to. He'd do a drop kick. Dickie could do so much. He just didn't do it unless he wanted to.
Unless he wanted to, and you couldn't get him to do it. unless
No,
he
not if
wanted
you told him to. He wouldn't do it.
I bet imagine when I was begging him to do stuff, and not tonight, kid.
No,
Oh, okay. So you did your Texas gig. When's Vince McMahon coming to the picture, and when's WWF come into the picture? You were sending tapes of Vince Senior, you said. So,
Yeah.
But I'm dying to hear that first face-to-face meeting that you and Butch had with Vince.
Well, the next thing was I was back. After that, I was back in Puerto Rico, and I booked for Carlos for more or less for a year and a half, 2 years, and then
Monsoon was still a partner with Carlos down there then too, wasn't he?
yeah, and then
A lot of people don't know Monsoon. I was actually a partner with Carlos Colon in Puerto Rico.
yeah, he was a partner in there.
And him and Javico were really tight friends too. And
Yeah,
Victor Javico.
Victor Javica.
Canhanas or whatever.
He pay you off in beers and fucking padillas.
Who got the word to Vince Jr. when you guys?
No. After that, mate, we went to Bill Watts' territory. Billy Dundee rang me up and he says he was booking for Bill Watts when they had the big run with the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, and he said we're all leaving. And he said I spoke to Bill Watts. They want you to come as booker. So I finish up with Carlos and go down there, and I've got Billy had already gone about 6 weeks ahead of me before I got there, 2 months, and they had Dickie Slater as the booker there in the meeting. They wanted me to take over the book, and then I said to them, well, was Dickie going? And they said, no, we're keeping him. No, you never. Well, I learned this. If a booker stays there and he's not happy, an ex-booker, it could be rough. And Dickie was a friend of mine from Florida and different territories. So I never took the book. Which is one of the worst things I did. Because 4 months later, they put the belts on us straight away, and then we're running with all the teams, Doc and Ted DiBiase and all the main guys and that. And
that place was loaded with talent also, wasn't it?
Oh, mate. Dickie Murdoch was there with me too. Yeah, it was a great place of talent. Anyhow, I never took the book, and they were running, and then they put us with the two little guys, the Fantastics, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, and little guys with big hearts and hard workers. And fucking, because I never took the book, they bought in Ken Mantell. Ken Mantell from
Fritz, right?
From Fritz.
He probably been booking in Texas.
Yeah, if it come in.
Yeah, Fritz, and he brings in the Freebirds and all his guys. Anyhow, what happened there was we were doing barbed wire cage matches around the territory. We're doing normal matches, then cage matches. Then they built a barbed wire cage, and then we were doing. And I found out that we were last match every night, and the arenas were good everywhere. And the Freebirds were making more money than us, and they were working before the mission. And that, we had the New Zealand flag, and the people were fucking wild and hot. But that's when I walked out there, and that's when I came back to Florida.
Right.
Then and had to run with the fabulous ones there.
And then also Mike and Steve, you guys had a real good run with Mike and Steve, if I remember.
Mike and Steve.
Yeah.
And then they bought out, and then the Crockett's bought out Florida, didn't they?
No, that's when Jack and I sold out Florida events, and then Crockett's kind of did a co-op because Dusty and Steve kind of took over the ownership of it, And so that's when Crockett started helping out in that territory to keep them from.
Anyhow, I'm back at Crockett's territory now after being out of it for 6 years or 7 years. I'm back in Crockett's territory, and I'm working around there now with the Rock and Roll Express in the second town. You know, they're doing two towns.
Right. Yeah, they ran 3 towns a night now.
Huh?
They ran 3 towns a night in a B town, B and C town.
Yeah. And we're running with the Rock and Roll Express, and then we just did an angle with Barry Windham and Lex Luger, and I got the call. I came out of the arena in Columbus, went to pick up my phone, and that to see what messages I had left. I left there, and there was a guy called Pat on the phone. Now I didn't know who Pat was. Fucking who's Pat calling me? Call me back. Now the last thing was thinking of Pat Patterson. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm working for fucking the Crockett's at the time. We're flying a lot of places because he's got the Crockett's have got 2 planes.
Right.
They've got the big, prop job and the jet. So we're all over the place, and then I called this Pat number, and it says Pat. It says, yeah, Pat here, and I said, yeah, Pat. Luke of the Sheep Herders here, and he says, hang on a minute, and the voice in the background says, "G'day, Kiwi." That was Vince, and that it was a Saturday morning, and I guess they were at Vince's home doing the book on Saturday morning. Because I found out later, every Saturday they went to his home in the morning, and he says, blah blah blah. We'd love to have you guys come up here. And I said, we'd love to. I said, I've been sending tapes there for years. About fucking time. Anyhow, so he said, when can you come? And I says, when you want me to come? He says, when you have a day off? I says, Wednesday. We didn't have a day off. I just said it was some Wednesday. So Wednesday morning, what was Wednesday? I must say, made one excuse. It was
TV, it was usually a TV day. Wednesday was usually a TV day.
But that's for Crockett's, yeah. So anyhow, we flew up there in the morning, sat with Vince, and I still remember
what was like. I mean, you two New Zealand boys, finally you've hit, what we consider the Klondike. Here we're in the big man's office now.
Yeah, and we were sitting out in the hallway, and then they waved us in, and we're sitting in like this, and he says, "Oh, good boys, I'd like to have you come work for us. But what do you think if I turn you good guys?" And of course, I piped up, and I said, "Well, bring us in his heels and turn us baby faces." Now, you don't tell Caesar what to do.
Right.
Tell Caesar what to do. I learned straight away then. He said, "Oh no, we don't do that." And Butch got up on his desk with his nose, and I've got a Roman nose. Butch has got a more bigger nose than me, and got that nose about 6 inches to a foot away from Vince. He says, "If you can make these faces babies, go for it." And Vince says, "Look at the heads on my top baby face. Look at Hulk Hogan. Look at Hacksaw Duggan. Look at Randy Savage." He says, They haven't got the smartest kisses, have they?" But they haven't. Look at those baby faces. You know what I mean? Look at Hacksaw. Look at the Hulk. Look at Randy. So that was it. He says, we're going to bring you in the baby faces. So we fly home. 3 days later, Butch calls me. He says, "Fuck, they must have sent these contracts to the wrong people. There's contracts for the Bushwackers here." And I says, "Butch, please, he wants to own us, for merchandising. You're going from a company like NWA, which is your wrestler. You go to a company now, WWE, you become a celebrity. It's a different thing altogether. It's night and day when it comes to publicity-wise, So next minute, and I hear that it was Tony's name. Tony Garea came up with that name, the Bushwackers.
You probably got royalties off of it.
It's still to this day.
I found out how much you make in royalties. We got 1% between us, 0.5% each when you're singles like that. And Vince owns the name. It's unbelievable. Anyhow, that's it. They said, we'll bring you up for doing vignettes. Those days, vignettes were a hot thing, heavy and hot. And of course, Crocodile #2 was just come out, that movie. And you know how hot those Crocodile Dundee movies were.
Right.
They were, so they started doing all these vignettes. We'd fly up for a day, and we'd do about 4 vignettes, fly back. We did that for maybe 3 weeks with vignettes, and then we came on the road. Now, a lot of people didn't realize that we were the Bushwackers were the sheep herders. Here's 2 clowns in the ring. First, we got George Steele saying, "One of you come up from the stairways and come down through the crowd. The other one comes from the front entrance to the ring." And every agent was giving us different ideas. You know, hey, you've got to both come to the ring together, because you can't have people looking this way and other people looking the other way. You know what I mean? So we started swinging our arms. Butch says to me, we always swung our arms when we're heels at the fans. You know what I mean? He said, let's start marching to the ring. We're high and lifting our feet. And so we started doing that, and the fucking people caught on to it. They all started doing this, you know, that sort of stuff. And then Butch Butch about 3 weeks later went further. He started grabbing people's hands and licking them.
So that's how that started. That just started off of Butch just one day just grabbing a guy and licking him, right?
Yep. And that now I started, he said, do it too. So I always put my hand on the guy's head and lick the back of my hand. You know what I mean? And that's how I think how Butch got sick. You know, when he was sick in the hospital for 3 months.
From licking people.
Yeah.
How do you explain that to a doctor?
Doctor, Mr. Layfield, how did you get sick?
I've just been licking fans.
You've been eating with fans.
That was after WWE.
Right.
But that's how we started. We had the gimmick there, and the fucking people caught on to it. This was not 88, 89. The people bought it. Even on NFL, people would do a touchdown, you know, a football player, and all of a sudden he's doing this in the end zone.
How much of the vignettes was you guys? Those vignettes were awesome. Those were some of the best vignettes ever.
What about the one in
how much of it was you guys? I mean, I know they probably gave you a template of this is kind of what we want. How much of it was you guys with the eating without the forks and all the stuff you were doing? Because it was awesome stuff.
Vince didn't. They never wrote the whole script those days. They would give you just an idea, and we would go off and do it. You know what I mean? The stuff we did, and that they'd given us, you know, give an outline. You know, what's the name? What's the name was always there? The guy from Houston who's back with Vince at the moment.
Bruce.
Bruce would be there with us, and
I hope you licked his face.
Bruce admitted
most of the people are licking other things.
Yeah. Hey, I met Bruce when he was working for Paul Bosch. He was 20 years old, or 18 or 20 years old. Paul Bosch.
He invented the Bushwackers.
He invented vignettes.
Yeah. Those ideas, all those were taken off to the Crocodile Dundee, you know, the different side of the road and the wording and all that sort of stuff. We sort of copied down that alleyway because that was a hot item at the moment, at that time.
One of the best things I ever saw was when Bret Hart did the Bushwacker. You know, because there you got Bret Hart, this very serious champion, and all of a sudden the Bushwackers are out there, and he completely breaks character and does the Bushwacker with you guys. It was, the place went, as Pat would say, banana. It was awesome.
That was in Madison Square Garden.
Oh, it was so good. We all just popped like it was awesome.
Yeah, and afterwards he said, he still says it. He enjoyed it that night. He said we did about 4 towns together, and he said he enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was so unexpected, because Bret was always so serious. He's this, world champion, and everything. And all of a sudden he's out there doing the Bushwacker. The place just went ballistic. They were so excited to see it.
Yeah, it was great. That's how. Anyhow, then we were with Vince. At last, we're at home base. After being around the track, at last we're at home base. WWF.
Bret helped us write the rugby song in Europe.
Yes.
And, we spent, Jerry, I think you were on the tour. We spent about 23 days or 25 days, whatever it was, in Europe. And the Bushwackers were telling us how the NFL was fake and fixed. And so we wrote the rugby song about rugby being rigged. It's fake, it's phony, it's a bunch of baloney. Rugby's rigged, rugby's rigged. And they would sing their NFL song. We would sing our rugby song for 3 straight weeks on the bus.
Now you'd find somebody if they told you rugby was fixed, right?
That's right.
Just like JBL, just like that amateur wrestling. That was rigged. The pros
That's right. Amateur wrestling, especially in Oklahoma, it's fake, it's phony, it's a bunch of baloney. Amateur wrestling's rigged. Amateur wrestling's rigged.
Or you just
Jerry doesn't even find that funny now. He's laughing, but he's like really upset.
Wrestling ain't fake. People are fake.
What about that? Hey, what about the guy I work with too from Oklahoma? The guy with the hands. What's his name?
Danny Hodge.
Danny Hodge. Quite a beautiful guy.
The guy with the hands.
Hey, worked with him quite a bit after he was all fucked up, but it was good. But I didn't realize how strong he was.
You find out pretty quick, though.
Huh?
You can find out pretty quick, though.
Yeah. No, he was a gentleman with us. He was great.
Wasn't so gentlemanly with JBL one day.
No, he got me pretty good.
He brought tears to JBL's eyes one time with just a little grip on the hand there.
He did.
As a joke, or was it for real?
Oh, for real. I mean,
about half and half.
Yeah.
It was for real, but he was kind of joking, but it was for real. I had taken somehow a picture of me using the bathroom on the Oklahoma State sign, showed up in catering, and taken from behind. Just somehow that happened as a Polaroid picture, probably taken by somebody with me.
The Sheik did it.
The Sheik did it. And I couldn't wait for Gerald Brisco to get there and see it, because he'd already stretched me 1,000 times. That's nothing new. In walked Danny Hodge and Jack Brisco. And there's the pictures of me going to the bathroom on Oklahoma right there. That's, oh my God, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill me. And it wasn't long till they killed me. So it was kind of, he was smiling. I wasn't.
Yeah. I was lucky, Luthiers too. He was, I never worked with him, but he was referee quite a few times, and I caught some of those fucking those things from Lou. He was firm, but as a guy, a great guy. I used to barbecue with him. Lou was a great guy.
So Luke, you had your great run there and WWF and so you got your just deserves a little bit later on when you got the phone call saying that you're going into the WWE Hall of Fame. How did I mean, obviously you guys were overjoyed, but did you ever dream that when you were starting out in New Zealand?
No way. Never thought I'd be there. I'm an engineer by trade, a lathe worker, gas welder, arc welder, all that. But that was in the early 60s, late 50s, when I was working and still wrestling. You know what I mean? In my early years, I never thought this would happen. But when we went in the Hall of Fame, and it was mentioned, Facebook and Twitter and all that says, why are they putting those two clowns in? See, all the people thought that we started in WWF. A lot of people didn't know, and that when I told them that we'd wrestled Killer Kowalski, we'd wrestled The Rock's grandfather, Peter Maivia, wrestled him for years, Australia and New Zealand, because he had a home in New Zealand. San Francisco and New Zealand. That's where he had his two homes. And of course, The Rock and Stu Hart. I wrestled Stu Hart about 4 times, in tag matches with the Sons.
But
people
Luke,
didn't realize that. People never realized that we've been around that long.
But Luke, in fairness, if you had just been in WWE, you should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, just by itself, you had an incredible run. You're one of the greatest figures in the history of WWE. But then also, if you hadn't been in WWE, I think you still should be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
For your career before was just as amazing. That's what I think so cool about you and Butch, is that you guys were two completely different characters. You were this blood and guts tag team that drew a ton of money. Then you were this funny comedy team that drew a ton of money. That's really a cool career to look back on.
Yeah, they put us in 220. They put us in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame as the sheep herders in 220.
That's awesome. Which would you prefer, or do you care?
No, well, I love being a heel because Butch and me could make the people stand and sit down, let the babyface come back and then stand up and cheer. And then we'd cut them off and say, and watch the people sit down and get mad. And that we had that ability, which it took to, we learned because we'd been together so long. But money-wise, WWE, of course. You know what I mean?
Butch was so great because when we worked together in WWE, his back was bad and he couldn't take a slam. And he'd tell you, I can't take a slam because the way he'd hit, the back would go out on him. So every match, I would figure out a way like I forgot and call slam. And as soon as I would, he's like an octopus. He's got my neck hooked, my leg hooked. He's grapevine. every night I would try to get him. Like I would forget and go slam. And as soon as I would, he would latch on to me.
He became heavy.
Oh my goodness, Mark Henry couldn't have slammed him.
Now I'm going to change trouble here. I'm in a place on the west coast, on the east coast of Florida, with Florida Championship Wrestling. The Briscoes are on the card, but there's a pole match with Buzz Sawyer, and I don't know who else. Remember the poles you used to oil, Jerry?
We Vaseline the pole.
The pole.
Yeah.
Now I never seen that done, and of course Jerry was doing that. Him and Jack, and this Buzz. Buzz was a hell of a guy. Oh. God bless him. He died early, but one hell of a hand as an amateur and a professional wrestler. I worked with him a lot, and I booked him later on too. In territory I was in.
His forearm swelled up like a basketball trying to grip that damn thing and trying to get up there. He'd get, every time he'd get just a little bit more than you just see. And the people are down after like 4 or 5 times. The people, kind of caught on. Something's wrong with that pole. Finally, we had to end up and go run out and boost him up to grab the envelope because he was coming back in a world title match. And the envelope, whoever got the contract on the pole, the contract on the pole, old Southern thing, and whoever climbed the pole got the contract, pulled it down. And he was coming back on a title, so we had to make sure he won, So he couldn't get up there, and his arms had blown up so much, we finally had to run out. Jack and I run out and boosted him up there.
Now another night, I remember you running him. Was either you or Jack running him in high spots? It was about a five move high spot, and then you in the middle of the ring, you stopped him and you hooked him and closed him up for a sort of a pin. And that cut his wind off.
Yeah, we used to torture Buzz. I mean, that was we loved working with him because Buzz would go. Buzz had thought he was tough, and thought he
And
was a good wrestler, and we'd have him puking every night. I mean, just in and out, and like you said, we'd crisscross him, then we'd grab him, suplex him, and get on top of him like I did you, and put the put the no breather on there. He would be throwing up every night, man.
What about the one night, Jerry, that you a popper? The amyl nitrate.
Oh yeah, Morocco got it. Oh,
the capsule of the amyl nitrate, and you ran him, and then put him in the corner.
Put him in the corner and I just brushed him. I ran him. I was wrong as we get ready. Tagged out, and Jack ran him some more. And Buzz had no durability at all. I mean, he was one of those spurt guys. And man, we were running. Finally, got him in where I got it from. Morocco had gotten me by it the same exact way, but Morocco had 300 pounds on me. So then I bull rushed Buzz into the corner, and he's breathing. He's sucking air, and I take my amyl nitrate, one of those old capsules, they revive football players after they've been knocked out with, and pop it, stuck it up his nose. 3 guys on the first row passed out, and Buzz is buzzed.
I was there.
Everybody in the back knew what we were going to do. We told everybody what we were doing, so everybody was out watching it.
Poor Buzz. Yeah. But he was
we tortured that poor guy, and I mean, we had fun doing it too. God rest his soul.
What great matches he had with the blonde-headed guy on TBS.
Tommy Rich.
Him and Buzz.
They tore the place apart.
They would go 30 minutes, and I think they'd be drunk or whatever. But what matches they put on?
Well, Tommy,
I don't think they were ever sober.
Hey, Luke, tell us a story about, speaking of throwing up, tell us a story about the Road Warriors in Texas when you wrestled with them.
While we were in Texas and that, Joe Blanchard, we did a gimmick where we sent Joe Blanchard to the hospital. And that I did a hot thing when the territory started getting cold and Joe started bringing in different talent like the Zambui Express, Ray Candy and his partner, Ray Candy's partner, I can't think of him. They're 2.
I know who you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, we brought in the Road Warriors. Now, this is 83. The Road Warriors started in 82. And the guy, the booker in Atlanta, what's his name? Anderson. Ole hadn't told them it was a complete work. He still had them running over people. When he started them, he had them running over people on television all the time. Running. The poor guys would come to the studio and look for their names. And if they saw their names against the Road Warriors, they'd grab their bag and leave the studio, some of them, because these guys were rough. You know what I mean? Anyhow, Joe Blanchard brings them into fucking Texas. We're in Waco this night. And Fritz is running Waco too. We run it and Fritz runs it. And this night we're in the ring and Paul comes around to us and he says, well, we're the heels. And we said, I don't think you'll be. And that, because we've been here a while, we got some heat. So they come out in the ring and they soon realize they're the baby faces and we're the heels. Butch and me were like 2 pit bulls. We let them run over us, but the other one would come in and stop them and take over. Within 3 minutes, Hawk went over to the ropes, or maybe 5 minutes, went over to the ropes and puked out into the crowd. And it was sort of a greeny yellow. And the kid in the front row, we got this on tape. The kid in the front row said, "Dad, just like Kabuki, but it's got chunks in it." and Butch pulled him over and said, sweet mate. And Hawk thought he meant being sweet, you know what I mean? Sweet mate means all good, thumbs up. But he thought he was being a bit sweet. And Hawk, we had him in the corner holding him back, and Butch is in the ring. All of a sudden, fucking Hawk, that elbow, he came running out of that corner like an animal. And we had to explain to them later, sweet mate means everything is going good. They'd never been in a match. I don't think they'd ever been in a match over 6 minutes when they first come to Texas. You know, Oldie had them running over people all the time, you know, just TV matches and in arenas, short matches.
Luke, you know, you guys developed the walk. You know, you said it in the beginning. Butch come up with it, but you're famous for a walk, a 4-second walk. Kind of walk us through that 4-second walk.
Well, that was Pat's.
That was the Royal Rumble, right? We can't. The year don't matter, but it was a 4-second walk.
91 and 92, and Vince stopped using that clip 2 years ago. Always coming up to the Royal Rumble, they'd run that clip showing the people, and he stopped using it. I was pissed off. That was good publicity for me. Anyhow, Pat tells us that, and Butch goes out to the ring. Butch is in that ring for 20 minutes. When I come out, I get up on the apron. Earthquake grabs me, takes me over to the side of the ring, dumps me, and I just keep going like an ever-ready battery. And that.
That's great. Anybody hadn't seen that clip, Google it up, man, at a YouTube or whatever they do. But
yeah,
it's great. You come in in that walk, you go walk in, and you just Quake takes you, walks you across over the top, 4-second record, man.
Yeah, I had to.
And what Butch was hot, but he wasn't hot about the finish. What was he hot about? He went 20 minutes, and you went 4 seconds. He was hot about the payoff, right?
We brought that up on our Hall of Fame speech.
Right, yeah.
We brought that up on the Hall of Fame speech that he was in for 25 minutes and I was in for 4 seconds, and he paid the same money. That's funny. That's funny.
You know, people don't realize sometimes that stuff like that becomes iconic.
Yeah.
And you guys did, you did right away, but some guys would, I'm just going to be in there 4 seconds. That becomes iconic, and they played that forever. I mean, that was one of the highlights of the Royal Rumble for 30 years.
Yeah, and now that
Santino did it in 2 seconds.
That's right. Yeah.
That other guy from Canada, the Italian guy, I think he beat it. You know, the guy with the eyebrows joining?
Yep. Santino Marella.
Yeah. Yeah. He had a bit of a walk too. He had a funny walk too. He used to walk around the ring.
Yeah. We did almost the same thing. Jerry Lawler did it coming up from the commentary, where he started a sentence, his music plays, he gets in the Royal Rumble, he gets thrown out, and he comes back down and he finishes his sentence.
That's a good one.
They had me do it one day too, where I did the thing and Roman Reigns tipped me out, and and Vince told me, he goes, now don't sell it, act like nothing happened. Which it's part of the gig, it's, to me, that's the fun stuff.
A lot of the promoters,
fun stuff.
A lot of the promoters around the company booked me.
I'm back, but Luke.
Yeah.
We lost you, Luke.
He just completely went away. He
I
walking.
think he's mad about the 4 seconds in the Royal Rumble.
He's walking again.
Yeah, that's right. Right now he's walking, trying to get back in.
But what a career these guys have had, huh? It's
unbelievable. I don't know if you were there in the garden that time when Bret did that. That was one of the funniest things.
I remember the Germany deal with the song.
It was awesome, because nobody expected it out of Bret, and all of a sudden Bret just breaks character and does it. But yeah, what a great career these guys had, from the sheep herders and the Kiwis all the way up to the Bushwackers, and two complete different.
And you're so right. I mean, they rightfully deserve, as a Bushwacker, being in the WWE Hall of Fame, but any Hall of Fame out there, these guys, they possess a heat from all over the entire South, down in Puerto Rico. Like I said, in that match Jack and I had with them down there, we had a riot, man, and we were just coming in, but those guys were just so hot that every time they'd touch it, that crowd would just rush up to the ringside there. And
they had such a good gimmick they did. They take a map of whatever state they were in, and they take the flagpole of the Australian flag, and they'd stuff it down a toilet. You know, to get heat. They did it in Texas. They did it in Florida. Everywhere they were, that was their gimmick, and people just hated them over it.
Yeah. I wonder if he's coming back when you say the proper goodbye to him. Well, Luke, we want to thank you for the time today. We know we went over but we had a hell of a trip down memory lane, and some of that early stories about New Zealand wrestling. Yeah, it's just fascinating how different countries develop along the way. I mean, and here you started before the advent of TV in your country, and still had that urge and everything. I never made it all the way to the damn Hall of Fame. So.
I never knew about wrestling. I'd never seen it, mate. I never even seen a magazine till the first time I ever went to a wrestling match, you know, with my next door neighbor. And then the second time I went, I was in the ring.
Did your neighbor ever make it, by the way?
Bruno Becker, he traveled. He had a job, but he's locked up. But he worked Puerto Rico. He numerous times to Japan and the Middle East, Asia. You know, there was a guy called King Kong out of Singapore. You know, you heard of him in the 50s, Emil, and that he was 500 pounds, and that him and Steve were good friends, and they used to run all the time. In Singapore, you do tournament, 10-day tournament there, you know, in Gaywell Stadium.
Luke, I'm like Jerry. I can't thank you enough. You know, when I came to the WWE, everybody loved you guys for good reason. Everywhere I've been, they've loved you guys, just like I did as well. I got to work with you. We got a wonderful tour out of Europe and a song that we've been singing to each other for about 25 years. So it's absolutely wonderful to see you. I got to see you a few weekends ago. It made my weekend to get to see you. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Appreciate it, mate. Hey, I forgot to tell Jerry. Jerry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was there when Lex Luger and Ron Simmons started. With the
Hero Matsuda.
Now
tell us that story there. This is
I had to tell this because I told John the other day. We're working with Stanley and Steve Kern. Steve Kern's going away. I think he's going to get a hair weave or to transplant. So how Steve was, not Stanley. You know how Stan was. He was a gentleman. You know, a womanizer. Anyhow, they put Dan, JBL's partner, with Steve Kern, Ron Simmons. Ron had only been in the business, been treated by Hero for a short time, and that. So we were working for about 3 days, and that's we were tied up for about 2 or 3 weeks with Ron and Steve. 3 days, 4 days, which says to me, "Fuck, I'm having trouble breathing." and he says. And I says, what? And I says, I am too. Every time I suck in here or I touch around here, and that Ron, we saw the television, Ron was throwing punches that far away from our body, but it was going into our body that far. Remember when Ron started, Jerry?
I remember that.
Ron was 280 and fucking straight out of football, and he was rugged as hell.
A beast. Yeah, he was a beast, man.
And strong as he could be. You know, when he was with the Cleveland Browns, he set the NFL rookie record for doing 225 48 times. Wow. He broke Lyle Alzado's record. He was world-class strong.
Yes, world-class. Yep.
And a world-class gentleman, too.
What a beautiful guy.
Yeah.
An awesome human being. A wonderful human being.
Yeah. I had to tell Jerry that. He did that.
I love hearing Ron's stories. Ron's story.
Yeah, Ron's a happy guy. He's always a smile on his face.
Yeah, thank goodness.
You, John, you've seen him the other way though, haven't you?
Oh, I have. Yes, it's not. It's scary. It's scary. I thank goodness he never once got mad at me. I might not be here.
Yeah, that's how I feel. There's certain guys, I'm glad they never got mad at me, man.
That's right.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
Anyhow, guys, I appreciate you having me on your show. And by the way, what's it called?
Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw.
Right there on Bradshaw's shirt there. It's on YouTube. Thanks for asking, Luke. It's anywhere that you get your podcast. It's on YouTube, Spotify. What else, John?
All of our social media channels.
everywhere, man. Apple. Yeah. We made Apple, man.
Well, folks, don't forget to check me out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Bushwacker Luke.
You're on Cameo too, right? You do Cameo?
I do cameos all the time and Memos, cameo.me/Bushwacker Luke, Memo.me, thrills.com, and my website, bushwackerluke.com.
And that's where they can book you if they want you for an appearance or a card show or something like that.
Okay. They can book me. Okay, guys.
They should.
And it's been a great time. I enjoyed it fully.
Thank you, sir.